Good afternoon, and a slightly earlier good evening to everyone listening from the UK. I am Kev Baker, and that's right, it's the right time, the right place for today's Kev Baker show, right here on TFRlive.com. It's been one of those very, very strange days, a strange 27 hours or so. And we'll get into that in just a moment, but don't forget tomorrow night we've got a first-time guest. Well, slightly first-time guest coming on the show, and we're going to be urging you all to turn down the lights a little because we are going to be turning up the creep factor. Yes, we're going to be getting into the paranormal with Enda Coin, and prepare yourselves for an accent fest as well, because Enda has a very, very broad Irish accent, so it's going to be. I'm sure Joe Joseph, who's here with me tonight, we'll have a right good laugh at tomorrow's show, because you know how he always mixes my accent up with the Irish one. So that's something to look forward to. But tonight I've got a real cracker lined up, and really the day dictated the show. I had booked tonight's guest a while ago, Ryan Gable, and you know I really like bringing Ryan onto the show. And I know Joe likes Ryan as well, so we're all going to team up tonight. And just earlier, or through the morning, through the night over here, Ryan had messaged me, what's the topic? So I wake up this morning, and that's when the weirdness really kicked in, because just yesterday on the Freedom Link with my good friend Joe Joseph, if you were tuned in, we were discussing the fact that despite technology making our lives seemingly more convenient with apps that are designed to save us time, it's almost as if we're having less and less time in the day to do things. It's like some kind of paradox, as we described it yesterday. And at the time, I threw out the idea that it's because we're experiencing some kind of information overload, which is affecting our perception of time, maybe affecting our time-space, literally. So all that time woo yesterday really got myself and Joe going. And I thought it was going to be Freaky Friday before we revisited this kind of thing. But then this morning, I get up, and Alistair, my good researcher I always give a shout out to, he led me to a story which was all about a quantum computer that had done something really special, because it appears this quantum computer had reversed the direction of time. Now, go with me on this, because they say this study could rewrite our understanding of time as a process of governing the universe, and the experiment itself was conducted on a quantum computer constructed of electron qubits. Now, you got to remember that a qubit is a unit of information. There's that information again, described by a 1 or a 0, or a mixed superposition of both a 1 and a 0 at the same time. Now, in the experiment, a simulation that they call an evolution program was launched, which caused the qubits to become an increasingly complex changing pattern of zeros and ones. Now, the new experiment is like if you imagine a pool table and you smash open the pool balls at the start of the game, and then as you watch that, it's as if time is reversed and all of the balls come back together just the way they were when they were perfectly aligned in the frame. Now, that sounds a bit weird, but it says the scientists found that working with just 2 qubits, time reversal was achieved with a success rate of 85%. When 3 qubits were involved, more errors occurred, resulting in a 50% success rate. But this goes against the second law of thermodynamics, which explains that systems progress in one direction only, from order to disorder, or as we're more commonly used to hearing, from order to chaos. Yet this experiment suggests bringing things back from that chaos to order. Now, does that sound familiar? And then, as if that wasn't weird enough today, just as I'm thinking about all of this and trying to string it all together, didn't know how it was all going to work, a listener got in touch, Brody, big shout out to Brody, and he was alerting me to the fact that something was going on with Facebook. So I ended up heading on over, trying to log in, and I was met with a message, something wrong with your account, you can't get in. And I thought, finally, Zuckerberg's put me in Facebook jail. I can get my digital cred points up. My social credit would go down, but hey-ho. But then I was to find out that it was a global outage. Facebook, Instagram, and
No.
Messenger all down, Joe. And we're told it's this kind of glitch with the algorithm.
It was Joe Joseph Berg.
You see,
and he went and just totally destroyed everything.
You know how my mind works? After my initial laughter at some people freaking out over on Twitter, well, what happened was I started to kind of speculate. And if everything's information and we're building quantum computers out of raw units of information, electrons, ones or twos, and we're able to manipulate it so that time reverses, what effect does that have? And we're living in a world now, especially on social media, there is a digital realm that is driven by algorithm. So what if cause and effected? What if that's caused some kind of glitch? And I know that's speculating, and I know that is absolutely sounds out there, but just what if?
What if indeed? And so I'm glad that we have tonight to discuss this, because it would appear that more of these anomalies are occurring all over the place, documented, some just Reddit posts or whatever, but I'm seeing more and more discussion about these time anomalies that are taking place. And then again, just a basic observation. It seems as the more time I've saved with all of these devices and all of this technology, I find it difficult to grasp why I'm so short on time all the time. You know? So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation, Kev.
No, this really is going to be good. And like I say, it's not just me and you here tonight, Joe. We have got a good friend of mine, a brilliant guest, Mr. Ryan Gable is here on the show with us. And for people who haven't heard Ryan before, you know, I've done a lot of shows with Ryan in recent times, and what I'll do is I'll just tell you where to check out his work, and I'll get Ryan to give a brief description about himself, but check out The Secret Teachings over at thesecretteachings.info, and he broadcasts on Fringe FM. I was on there just recently with Clyde Lewis. Yes, name dropping shamelessly. But yeah, Ryan is here with us tonight, and let me tell the audience out there, this guy's been like moving at light speed since we're on science and time and woo tonight to get back here in time for the show. So Ryan, I really appreciate you coming along, brother. We're getting into time tonight, but just you take a little moment of time to tell people who might not have heard you before what you're all about, man.
Hey, thanks, Kev. I appreciate you having me on the show again. And I'll shamelessly name drop as well. We did have Clyde Lewis. We did a wonderful roundtable together on my show the other night, Clyde Lewis and Kev Baker. So that's fun, and it's all free on my website at www.thesecretteachings.info. I've been doing radio for about 8 years, and I started out at a college radio station. I started to try to find things to talk about when I first began radio. I thought, I have 2 hours to fill. I don't really know what to talk about. And so I just started picking up books, anything, no discrimination. And I started to try to learn. And over the years, as I progressed in radio, I really found some niches that I think are my more areas of expertise. And those are like health and occultism and symbolism. And then I talked to people like you, Kev, and I talked to all of the other mostly great people in our industry, a few people not so great. And I learn a lot of stuff from other hosts and from guests over the years. I've interviewed, like you, so many guests that I can't even remember some of the people I've interviewed, not because they weren't great, but because I've interviewed so many. And as I've learned, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that, as cliche as it might sound, I don't think I've really learned that much, but I did learn one thing that has nothing to do with information and fact. I've learned that I can critically analyze something, and every single person listening can do this. It's not some guru, you have to buy a book or you have to buy a video to learn how to do it. It's something that we can all do. It's objectivity. I think that's the one thing I've learned in all my years of radio. Objectivity, being able to say, you know what? I don't necessarily agree with that, but I don't necessarily disagree with it. Let's have a conversation rather than arguing about something based on your preconceived belief and my preconceived belief. Let's just look at things objectively. And no matter what the subject is, even something like time and time travel, there are a lot of very, let's say, interesting. And then a lot of woohoo videos about people claiming they're time travelers. I don't necessarily believe that, but it's not to say that time travel isn't a reality. Same thing with flat Earth or anything else. I think a lot of those things are psyops, but objectivity, I think, is so important, Kev. And I think that's really what I'm all about, trying to look at things objectively.
Isn't that interesting, Kev? How that seems to be, if you do this right, and I don't have the answer for what right is, but I can tell you that that's the biggest thing too, for me as well, was learning how to operate outside of the box, because boy, that box is really constricting, and you don't realize how much you box yourself in with identity politics.
Yeah, some of the boxes are actually they're almost invisible, Joe.
Yeah.
Until somebody points them out to you.
Truly, and so, yes.
Those are the thought police coming there.
Yeah, the thought police are here.
Definitely. Well, it's the UK, so you never know. They might turn up at my house sometime very, very soon. But no.
But I found that article riveting in a way and not so riveting, because first of all, anything with quantum computers don't surprise me. But it helped validate things a little bit as far as what Ange experienced that one night with that time shift or whatever. And then also with the Mandela effect. When we start looking at the Mandela effect and how that's kind of manifested itself, now you've got another avenue to pursue here and look. Is it necessarily the agenda of some wackadoodle scientists out there to mess with humanity and start changing little random things, or is it a byproduct of the research, or is it intentional? I don't know. All I know is that article there kind of gave me a little more substance as far as trying to understand this stuff.
Just listening to you there, Joan, you have to wonder, because if we go back slightly in time, and we spoke about this before, and I'm glad you brought the Mandela effect up, because we often talk about a picture that I think we made it famous, really, and it's of a scientist at CERN at the time. And he was holding a thumbs up, and he had a sign on saying Bond 1, Mandela 0. And it really makes you wonder if now they are able to manipulate things at that quantum level. And we've often said time's irrelevant there. And when they're publicly telling us now that they're able to reverse the direction of time, and I'll come to you on this, Ryan. I mean, I know we're speculating, but we have to throw the D-wave, CERN, things like this into the actual mix here. But it does make me wonder if now they have such a hold on things that, like I say, that they're basically in control of manipulating things at a quantum level. And when you think about that quantum world, it's almost like another dimension within our own. And if you can control things and manipulate the quantum level, you've pretty much hacked reality. What do you think, Ryan?
I think that's a very interesting way of putting it, and I think it's a very valid way of putting it. When it comes to things that are quantum-based, I always think of Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla as scientists who come from two different backgrounds in the sense, and in terms of what they've done experimentally and what they've built. Albert Einstein was very, very theoretical, almost all theoretical. Nikola Tesla, on the other hand, was theoretical, but he built things in his head and then built things physically. And we look at Albert Einstein as being the genius. That's Einstein. You're like Einstein. You're really, really smart. And people like Nikola Tesla, for a variety of reasons, are written out of history and science books. We seem to put a lot of, and I think this alone will answer your question from my point of view. I think we put so much focus on theory as opposed to what is physical reality, which is also arguable, that theoretical physics and quantum physics and things that are not necessarily so solid and so nailed down per se becomes more of a reality than the physical components of a Nikola Tesla type science, where it's theory, but it's also application. And I think in that sense, by focusing so much attention on theoretical reality, we've split off and we've already in our minds created a sub-reality.
That's interesting.
My view.
Yeah, that's interesting, Kev. And if you think about it, it's something that we humans routinely do. Especially like, what has the internet done? The internet has allowed us or given us the ability to create an alternate identity, an alternate me, an electronic version of me.
An avatar.
An avatar, right. In that it could be anything that I want it to be. Anything that I've been shortchanged on in the physical, by God, on the internet, I can be that person. And so, yeah, I mean, this is powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. But to me, it's like a human shortfall, too, at the same time. It's like, this is what we do. You know, we tend to do this.
That becomes our reality based on what we see, based on what we perceive. And so much of our reality anyway is already engineered, literally, as stale as this kind of terminology is,
Sure.
by social engineering.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
In fact, if I may give you a really quick example here, this is
Sure.
some news. I'm sure that you guys have seen this. There was a story from several different publications, but CNN was the biggest publication that published this about.
Oh, Kev's favorite.
Ago. Yes, CNN. It's very, very credible news.
Love it.
It's very communist. Communist goes back to Vlad in his more Soviet days, but still, you know, Kev really likes that stuff.
Joe,
and,
you know when you point out my Russian connections, I don't get a paycheck this month, right? You know that. Thanks, dude. Thanks. But no, over to you, Ryan. Come on. What have CNN, my beloved CNN, been saying this time?
I want my check, so don't mention anything about that. But this was back in November of last year, and we've literally seen and covered this for years and years and years and years. It goes back to the 40s and even before with cloud seeding. And that is CNN reporting November 23rd, 2018, Dimming the Sun, the answer to global warming, where they talk about Harvard and Yale University scientists published a story, an article, some research in the journal Environmental Research Letters. And they proposed cutting what they consider to be temperatures that are increasing because of humans breathing and pollution and things of that nature. It really is pollution as opposed to people breathing carbon dioxide. They proposed doing this with stratospheric aerosol injections. Now, this has, of course, been going on for a long time, but just on the point of reality and our perception of time and our perception of reality, this has been going on for so many years. I've got John F. Kennedy speaking at the United Nations back in the 60s about weather modification. So this is stuff that we've seen for a long time if we're paying attention. I've got DOD, Department of Defense, I've got NOAA documents, all of that actually on my desk because I'm preparing another show on it myself. And in the last couple of days, there have been a couple of other articles, one from The Atlantic, where now they're talking about, and another one from The Guardian, dimming the sun. That's the wording they use, dimming the sun. But they act, and I think the journalists think this, I think the scientists think this, they act like it's new, and they propose it to the public as, well, we're going to do this for the first time. But obviously, they're not doing it for the first time because this has been going on since before. But that's the creation of the sub-reality. And then when people see this, oh, well, okay, it's real.
Isn't that interesting? It's just unbelievable.
Well, that's precisely my point. I mean, I could ramble on about this, but that's the point. It's literally 1984. We've never been at war with XYZ country. We've always been at war with YXZ country.
That's so true.
That's the creation of a reality in the more three-dimensional sense, I think. Then you get into quantum computers, and that takes us to another level.
It really does, and you have to question, you know, what is reality now? Do we truly know what reality is?
Exactly, Joe. And the more I think about a simulation theory type reality, because I've often said to you, I don't think our quantum computers between our ears can even conceptualize the bigger picture of what's going on here. We're kind of designed from the frequency level up to how our brain operates, you know, for this dimension, this time and space. And I just don't think it's like monkeys trying to figure out everything out, or an ant trying to figure out the meaning of life. It's just never going to be able to do it.
even Trey Smith, you remember he went and in researching his Noah documentary, kind of got down that path of the simulation, right? And I forget how he came to the conclusion, but basically came that our reality is pixelated, like it's pixels or photons or whatever of information, if you will, almost like
that's
like
exactly what I'm
on a
talking about.
TV.
That's exactly what I'm talking about yesterday, Joe. Think of that. Think of everything being made up of those
Right.
pieces of data and the fact that we're flooding it now.
Just flooding it.
Yeah, we're
right?
flooding
That's
it.
exactly
Yeah,
right.
yeah, like
And
a swimming pool.
what happens to a signal when you put too much signal through? You overdrive it, and the picture gets fuzzy, it gets distorted. There's all sorts of anomalies that occur when you overdrive that signal. So yeah, man. I mean, it's all coming together. Interestingly enough, the pivotal thing that you have to do, though, if you want to see the big picture, is you got to step out of that box. You have to step out of the box, because if you don't, then you're not going to see it in its totality of what exactly is going on. And to me, Kev, this just further validates that it is something like that. Like, here you go. What we call the Big Bang was the creator basically hitting the execute function. Okay, it started. Here we go. Instantly, bam, execute.
You see, I think there's multiple kind of universes as well. I go for that many world theory. And Ryan, you're absolutely so spot on when you point out that most of the things that we think we know are based purely in hypothesis and theory. And like I say, we'll never be able to test these things. But what do you say, Ryan, to the whole possibility of the many worlds, multiple timelines, things like that?
Well, I think we could start with your question a moment ago. I answered it in part about quantum mechanics and understanding these kinds of things and being able to manipulate them, because genetic engineering is a very, very good and very, very physical, real example of understanding genetics to the degree that you can manipulate them, but not enough that you can predict, even with algorithms, the genetic mutations that could occur from your meddling in genetic affairs. And I think that's a great example, a microcosm of the macrocosm of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and things of that nature, and quantum computers, where you're dealing with messing with the very fabric of reality. Of course, you could manipulate it by accident. You could manipulate it on purpose if you were able to harness that kind of power and understand it and use it for mostly probably bad. But in relationship to everything that we've discussed so far, I have to think about, when I think about quantum mechanics and all of the theories and the different hypotheses that we hear about, I have to think that it's almost like, just as this example you gave about time and time being reversed and going backwards, it's almost like human beings, as part of a cycle, are also reversing and going backwards in terms of knowledge and understanding.
Yeah.
And mechanical technology has led to a lot of that, where when you could go out to a river and you could wash your clothes, I'm not saying that it's a horrible thing to have a washing machine, but putting so much reliance on a washing machine, so much reliance on a calculator, so much reliance on technology, thinking that it gives you more time when it actually gives you the same amount of time, but you choose to use it differently because, like going to a casino, you're so overwhelmed with the lights and the sounds and the smells, and you gamble away a lot of money, let's say, or you drink a lot at a bar, but you're not thinking necessarily. You're in a zone like an athlete playing a game.
Yeah.
And time passes so differently. And I think technology leads us to that, this mechanical technology. And perhaps in the sense of other dimensions, in the case of other worlds, I've thought, really quick, and I'll sum this up, I know we have to go to break soon. I've thought that maybe this idea of other dimensions and other worlds and being able to pass in and out of them with the right kind of knowledge, the right kind of technological application, maybe some of that is beyond theory and beyond hypothesis and beyond that being a reality. Maybe it's almost like a conspiracy in a sense. And let me suggest to you what I mean by that. I think that this idea that we live in a computer simulation is both literal, but it's also metaphoric in a way.
Oh, hold that thought.
Go. Yeah, no, we got.
This is the Camp Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I've got Ryan Gable here from thesecretteachings.info. That's www.thesecretteachings.info. You want to catch his podcast over there? Everything's absolutely free. Got Joe Joseph here with me today as well. We're getting into some kind of quantum time glitch. We brought up the new experiment where they're showing how time has been shown to reverse in direction thanks to a couple of qubits that they threw together involving electrons and all the wacky stuff that goes on with the quantum world. But now we're going to shift forward a little bit, because I was saying to the chaps during the break there, I was saying I'm going to basically pose this question, because what happens if, just like when we're paying attention to memes such as Slender Man, and we talk about tulpas on the show, how we literally are able to somehow consciously manifest them in this world. Well, think of all of the attention that has been poured into the internet in general, just the World Wide Web, every single day, by all of the billions of people around the world, all of the time spent there, all of our consciousness, focused in on that one thing. And one version of the singularity that I read about some time ago was if the internet was able to at some point have a conscious thought. So, Ryan, I'm going to come to you first, because what if, just like the tulpa on the micro scale, we're able to manifest? What happens when all of the attention we're putting into the World Wide Web on the whole, day after day, week after week, with billions of eyes peering on there, all of that attention, all of that energy that we're giving it? What do you think about if we could maybe, or the internet maybe, could take on a life of its own?
I think it already has. And before we went to break, I started to explain what I thought was a quantum conspiracy, and I think it connects exactly with what you're saying. I've written in my book, The Technological Elixir, and I've talked about on my show for many years, and other people have too. I didn't develop this idea necessarily, but I tweaked it a little bit, because I had this thought that all of this talk of living in a simulation, it's a computer simulation, whatever you want to call it, is kind of like a conspiracy by a higher life force or some kind of artificial intelligence, which could very well be the internet being conscious, as Christoph Koch from the Allen Institute for Brain Science in Seattle suggested the same thing. That this conspiracy is a conspiracy to trick us into giving up our free will, and tricking us to give up our free will by telling us and suggesting to us and implying to us and demanding in a lot of ways that we believe we already live in a sub-reality. We already live in a computer simulation, so that we will more easily be coerced into accepting that kind of sub-reality enslavement. And I think it's already begun. We have concerns by a lot of people that are in the tech world, and then people like us, people like you listening, about technology and how by 2030, 2050, we're going to be uploaded into a computer. We're going to be cyborgs, and it's so great, some people think, and other people think it's horrifying.
But give us that long?
Well, that's not what I'm saying. That's what says. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? That's what I'm trying to say. We have already begun this process. We've already, like you said, we've uploaded ourselves into a digital realm already. And this digital realm that we've uploaded ourselves into, this is a sub-reality. It's like the digital world and the digital version of ourselves, these digital avatars with all of our information uploaded already to social media, as one prime example. This digital reality is evolving, and we are evolving as these digital avatars, but the biological us is decaying, it seems. The biological conscious us is being deprived. It's being stomped out.
It's almost, you could compare it to being assimilated.
It is a simulation. It literally, I think, is like the Borg in Star Trek.
It would be the perfect invasion, Joe. Handing us the tools required to take us over this way.
Well, that's kind of how I've see it played out is that here you have these otherworldly entities feeding information, and we building these devices through which then we connect, and we have more throughput, if you will, to that realm or whatever. And, and quantum physics, once a door is open, it's always open. So time doesn't really constrain that process. So you have all of that kind of taking place. I find, like I said, I find this just unbelievable, the pace at which this is happening and technology is advancing. The ability, if you will, already to read the mind. If I think it was, I think last year, Kev did, and Ryan, maybe you heard of this too, but they were talking about installing these prototype mind reading machines in airports so that they can catch people before they do this stuff. I mean, Minority Report to a T.
Well, Facebook is working with a former DARPA executive, or I should say a former DARPA executive is working with Facebook. Their private, off the grid, if you will, secretive skunk works, Building 8. They call it Building 8 Skunk Works at Facebook, where they developed mind reading technology. I think Zuckerberg was in the Washington Post. You could type this in, Zuckerberg, Washington. I think it's the Post, but just type in Washington newspaper, Zuckerberg, mind control. And he's talking about literally being able to read your thoughts and in real time post those thoughts to your social media pages, Facebook in particular. It's very convenient.
I mean,
Facebook read your brain.
Seriously. I mean, hey, now all of a sudden, hey, I don't have to do "Hey Siri" and then say it 10 times to get Siri to transpose it right. Oh, wow. All I got to do is just think it, and there it is. Kev, memorization out the window. I don't need it anymore.
This would be a great way for you to do your show, Kev. You could just sit there and think, and you wouldn't have to talk.
It'd be awesome, wouldn't it? We could live stream from we could be in bed, and we could just send our digital avatars into the virtual studio and get it going, man.
We'll all be like Wall-E, the humans in Wall-E.
But again, doesn't this show you the way that they are literally now manipulating and able to access that very quantum level of reality? Because take it to our brains again, mind reading. And you can go to the presentation by Stuart Hameroff that talks about quantum biology and basically how the tubulin dimers within our neural networks work exactly like qubits.
I love that. I love those names, by the way.
So if they're able to read the states of these qubits to the point where they know our thoughts, etc., etc., see how it ties in with this manipulating reality? Because if you can read a thought, you have to...
would never do anything like that.
Exactly. Somebody said to me today, recently, I wonder if they're able to literally transmit dreams into our minds at night. And if you're able to read minds, and they're talking about it here, and your DARPA mentioned, so they've been working on this a while. This is the public rollout of this stuff. You bet your bottom dollar they can do that.
If they're doing that with, let's just say over RF, if you will, you would have to be in close proximity in order for that to happen. So at least you got that. Now, if they've got another way of doing it, then yeah, that's probably pretty scary. But if you're doing it at a frequency that you can manipulate the brain at, and that's typically on the low side of things, you've got to be fairly close in order for that to happen.
I think if you start at the base level of advertising, going back specifically to Edward Bernays and propaganda and convincing people to buy things, whether it's a product or an ideology, based strictly and solely on emotion rather than reason.
Man.
That's the microcosm of mind control. Then you advance to technical forms of mind control. You advance to the kinds of mind control that we have today, where thoughts even for advertising, can be implanted in your head. And companies do this publicly to advertise. In Los Angeles, they use billboards that can project thoughts into your head. Nobody can hear them unless you're in this tiny little area that they haven't marked it off with big signs, but you go into this little area and then you can hear these thoughts in your head, and it says, listen to whatever the show is, 9 p.m. Thursday nights on CBS or whatever the station is.
Yeah, that was a Paranormal State, something like that.
Want to talk about?
Yes, that's right. That's right, Kev.
And talk about taking augmented reality to the next level.
That's what I was going to say, because we recently brought up the article about the mirror world that they're stitching together right now. So they're literally going to be able to read our thoughts to the point where those digital avatars, those holograms that pop out in front of us, will know exactly what we're wanting. Because
but
literally,
you notice how it's all put forth as a service, quote unquote. You know, it's a service to you to make your life better, to enhance your life. And this is going to enhance your senses. It's going to enhance, it's all going to be preached as an enhancement, right? But there's a big but here. The big but is it's game over. They have access to your brain at all time.
You say they, but what if we go with what somebody actually said in the chat room? I didn't catch the name, sorry, but you'll know who you are. It's almost as if we're describing some kind of energy vampire that we're giving birth to with the internet. Yeah.
Well, it sucks off of humans every element that makes us organic living creatures. It sucks the life, it sucks the soul out of us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And you can name companies. You can name DARPA. You can name Google. You can name Facebook. You can name the T-shirt Zuckerberg. You can name a lot of people.
And all of them come from DARPA. When you look at the seed money for Facebook and Google and all the rest of them, I mean, we're really talking about coming from the world of black ops.
And even the internet itself was funded and financed through DARPA.
Yeah, 30th anniversary of the interwebs this week. They were having big presentations over at CERN. I watched a little bit of it. Very, very dry, very boring. But you've always got to keep an eye on what's going on over at CERN, Ryan.
We get this idea, I think, about time also, just like we do about liberty and safety. There's that famous quote by Benjamin Franklin: those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And I kind of tweaked it for my book in relation to technology and this perception that technology gives us more time. And I tweaked it to say those who give up essential human duties to acquire more perceived time only lose that time and their humanity. And I think it seems like time is speeding up, Kev, to go back to your main point. I was just thinking about this at break, that time seems to be speeding up in this sense. Collectively, overall, a lot of people, I think, agree on this because we have access to so much more information. It's like the famous Einstein example of spending time in the presence of a beautiful woman and time passing very quickly, or spending time, at a job maybe you don't like and time passing more slowly. When we're interested and we're aware of things, time seems to go quicker. In the presence of a beautiful woman, in the presence of so much information, time speeds up. We have access to more stuff. But when we're not as connected digitally, and we go out into the middle of the country, out into the middle of the woods, no phone, no internet, time seems to pass more slowly, more smoothly, more calmly. It gets rid of the anxiety and the stress and the worry to reconnect, as some people say, with nature. And I think that is part of the reason why time seems to be speeding up, is because we have access to so much information that we now have an overload of information, and it obscures reality, and it prevents us from recognizing that there is a literal copying of our physical reality into a digital holographic reality, that if one does not exist now, like as a part of what we've been discussing, a computer simulation, a holographic reality, one is being created, and we are being assimilated into the digital one and evolving digitally while we are degrading biologically.
Wow. Just wow. It's like I was saying to you during the break, it's sometimes listening to you, it's if you're able to grasp my thoughts that I just can't string together and put them
I'm
into
reading
this.
right.
Yeah, exactly, dude. You're doing the Zuckerberg trick on me, man. It's like he's Yuri Geller in me, Joe.
That was good. Yeah.
No, but it's weird though, this kind of
you every once in a while.
This kind of overlaying of the two realities, Joe. You know, this digital reality with our reality, and we are. And you can look at something like what happened today with social media and the big meltdown because Facebook and all the rest of them went down. And the reaction of people shows you that relationship that we have and that connection. And it's a dangerous connection when you see the genuine of frenzy from some people, dude.
Yeah. It is. It's dangerous. However, I'm kind of comforted in a way that at the very same time this is all going, and there's a race against time. That's why I think they are so hell-bent on getting off planet as fast as they humanly can. And I think that's why they're hell-bent on making digital copies of themselves for the purpose of preservation. But our magnetic field is weakening rapidly. And with that said, there are things that are probably going to take place, cyclical things that are going to take place that will prove devastating for the vast majority of the globe. So there is, like I said, a lot of things going on at once. I don't think humanity is going to achieve widespread cyborg, where we become machines, basically, like the Borg. I just don't think we make it that far. I don't give us much time.
That's the promise. That's what they promise us from the tech companies. They promise us superhuman abilities.
Yes.
But we can already see just with handheld devices, it's actually made us subhuman.
It's counterproductive. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Yeah, I often wonder too, guys, you look at the Great Pyramid, right? You look at the pyramids afterwards. None of them hold up.
Whoa, Joe, did you just go from like the Matrix to the pyramid? This is so cool.
I did. But you notice how they kind of devolved afterwards? And I just wonder if that same thing isn't happening to us again. Where here we go, that they had achieved such greatness and then
we're going to hit that singularity, and then over time we're going to try and replicate what we've got now.
Yeah, but it's man, it's complicated. But then again, it's really not. I look at at AI being that Antichrist thing that everybody's looking for, in that it's going to and it already has been put forth as the answer to all our problems. China uses it for people management, traffic management, basically to manage their society.
Estonia, it's governance by algorithm, dude.
Right. Astana, same thing. Smart city. Scotland, Glasgow, smart city. You start taking a look at aerotropolises. Places like Denver and Memphis is one, Dubai. These are all aerotropolises designed specifically not just to be smart cities, but also to be what's considered free trade zones. And then over time, you build factories and you build, I don't know how long factories are going to go on for, but you basically center your productivity around that free trade zone, thereby freeing yourself of any taxes, of any duties associated with trade, because it's in a free trade zone. Labor laws don't apply. A lot of things change when they do that. And so they like that melding of that smart city type of thing and technology, total management of people, along with the lack of any sort of protections or regulations or governmental oversight of that area. So, I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know. like Disneyland and hell all at once.
How do you regulate for an interdimensional entity handing you the tools to the quantum castle, Joe? An invasion
therein
by
lies the problem.
an invasion by a force that Geordie Rose says are akin to being like H.P. Lovecraft ancient ones. You know, like Cthulhu, stuff like that. And
That's what I'm saying. See, so the shields drop, guys,
yeah,
right?
yeah, you don't
The
regulate
shields
against
drop.
that.
What the hell? I mean, yeah, you got to remember, at one point in time in the Earth's history, there were very sizable beings that walked the Earth, and according to at least biblical prophecy and the Sumerian King's List and the the tablets and all that. Oh gosh, it's supposed to not be so good right up towards that end. And I can see why there are certain people that might want to go off planet. But the problem that I see, guys, is that it doesn't matter what planet you go to in our solar system. They're all affected by the sun, and the sun's going quiet, and it's affecting our magnetic field. I'd have to imagine that anywhere you go in our solar system, it's going to affect their magnetic fields too. I'm just saying. I don't know. Is that speculation?
Joe, come on. I think it's like a given that we speculate on the Kev Baker show.
We must speculate.
I give everyone that room for speculation, Ryan. But what do you think to what Joe just said there?
I remember speaking with, and I'm not trying to name drop, but I was speaking with Jim Mars before he passed away.
Oh no, you're allowed to name drop when it comes to Jim Mars. Yeah,
we're shameless. We don't care about that stuff.
So we were talking about something similar, and I had talked about it on my show before, and then Jim came on and we were discussing the exact same subject, and he said, "Well, for listeners, I want to point out that other planets in our solar system, according to mainstream science, NASA, etc., are experiencing a melting of their ice caps in a lot of places too."
You don't say.
Obviously, the sun plays a significant role, not just in Earth weather, but in weather on all of the planets within its influence.
Not at all, Ryan, not at all. That was when I was leaving my fridge door open when I was just a young boy. I was contributing to the polar caps on Mars and things melting. Don't be so ridiculous, man. Ignore that big nuclear furnace in the sky.
If you're leaving your fridge door open, you might be contributing to global cooling, which was popular in the 70s.
Well, this is very true, and it's getting popular again now if you start looking at the reports as well. Because I think everything's been affected by this grand solar minimum.
But it's all rubbish. That's the point. It's all rubbish. You know, they don't even go after, well, let me say this. They don't put out the real problem. It's treat the symptom. That's what they do in medicine these days. They treat the symptom. They're always trying to find a cure. No. There's no money in that. Same thing here. There's no money in that. There's nothing they can do about it. But they sure as hell can sell solar panels and carbon credits. Oh, yes, they can. And they can party and right up until the end. You know, that's at least how I see it.
I listened to one of those Geordie Rose. Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yes, it's Geordie. It's Geordie. Yes, you know, somebody that went to college with him actually contacted me to let me know that.
Really?
Yes.
Do they still know him today?
Did know of him, yes. Didn't get any further with that conversation, unfortunately. I thought that's
a tough conversation to be had.
And of course, we know Geordie listens to the show. Big shout out to Geordie and D-Wave and Sanctuary and Kindred, Quadrant, all those other companies that are really affecting reality right now.
For the endless content.
Yeah, you can use the thumbnail for this show for one of your future presentations when you're trying to tell people it's nothing like what these guys tell you. It's more like H.P. Lovecraft. Go figure.
That's exactly what I was going to mention. I was watching one of those videos, the first time I had ever watched a full one of his talks, one of his discussions. And I'd just like to read you. I took notes on it. I had a little.
Excellent! We love this.
I think I've played that, Ryan, maybe probably around 100 times. I've got all the sound bites.
At least we probably memorized it.
I stalk Geordie Rose. It's quite creepy the way that I follow everything that guy says, man.
Definite bromance.
Well, if you listen to what he says, I find it very interesting. The last thing that he said, I want to read you. It's a sentence and a half, 2 sentences. And I think it's kind of like a Freudian slip in a way. I think it's kind of like something is speaking through him. This is his wording.
Ooh, I like that.
This is all together. He said this all together. It wasn't like there's something 5 minutes in between these words. It's all together.
Okay, when you do it, can you talk?
Can you talk like this?
Not on command.
Joe Joseph, man.
He said, in relationship to what you just said, Kev, about this being Lovecraftian and the great old ones coming through, and he talked about how when he talks about these beings, they're going to be super intelligent AI, etc. And he gets done with this part of the presentation, and he says, underneath it all, these are his words, quote, underneath it all is this rising tsunami that, if we're not careful, is going to wipe us all out. Then he pauses, and in the same sentence says, on that pleasant note, has a chuckle, we're hiring people to make something like this happen. So just rewind real quick.
Well, let me just add to that before you rewind it, because if you watch that presentation closely, there's a slide comes up behind him, and it's about the hiring of people. And he says, in the slide, it's got the wording, we're hiring demonologists, and it's scored out.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I'll show that when we come back after the break, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go. Hour number 2 on today's Kev Baker Show at the slightly earlier time if you're in the UK. So yes, if you have just tuned in right now for the start of the show, what's happened is the US, they've done a bit of time traveling on us because they put their clocks forward at the weekend and we haven't done so yet. And of course, with my very beloved TFR here, who allow me to put on this show time after time, based in the US, we stick to the American timing. So that means we kind of play a bit of juggling about for a week. So please, 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 for the remainder of this week, or until we put the clocks forward, I've not even checked when that is yet, we will be at the earlier time of 9 p.m. Got Ryan Gable here with us tonight, but don't forget, coming up right after today's show, we have got Lucky and Dr. Brooks Agnew with the quantum connection, so it's all to look forward to right
Hey,
here.
Ken,
Yes,
out of
Joe.
curiosity, is there any clocks that you have to set still? Funny, this time around, it was the first time that I didn't have to set a single thing.
You mean
They all
like, imagine,
change by themselves.
can you imagine if you had like an old grandfather clock and even it changed by itself now, Joe?
I mean, that's crazy, but seriously, that was kind of just one of those
Holy
moments where I
heck.
had to step back and be like, "Whoa!"
I just had a really surreal moment there. It just said, in fact, hang on. Yeah, Joanne Rivers has just subscribed to the YouTube channel. That's a surreal moment. Did she not pass away? It actually said Rohan Rivers anyway.
It's Joan.
There you go,
Joan.
yeah. That was weird. It just flashed up on the screen there, dude, as you were talking. I was thinking,
Okay.
I'm even getting subscribers from other dimensions now.
Very nice.
Right here. Yes.
I like
And talking of other dimensions, though, that's where we left it before the break, remember? Geordie Rose and Ryan had...
Ryan, what do you think, man?
That's an untapped audience, is what I think.
Absolutely.
You have to dimensions.
Wasn't it weird what happened to her after she became very critical of the Obama first?
Yeah, once
person.
she pointed at that bulge in Michelle Obama's pants,
Just
it didn't
saying.
end well.
No, it didn't end well at all. Isn't it funny how that happens? But no, to an equally strange story, Geordie Rose. And Ryan brought up Geordie in his talk about the tsunami that is about to be unleashed upon us. And I pointed out about a thumbnail he uses in that presentation. And it's interesting because he's talking about all this stuff, all this creepy stuff, and saying that Elon Musk and Anthony Patch and I and all of you out there that are worried about AI, we're all crazy. Because in reality, it's a whole lot crazier than we think, right? But behind them is a slide saying that we're here to recruit, and it's got demonologists scored out, and then it's got software engineers right after that. So you'll say, well, Geordie's just having a laugh with all the kind of things that we talk about, but we think there might be something deeper and darker to this, because when you look at Geordie in particular, I don't think he just uses these throwaway comments, and I don't think he's just trying to be trendy and to cause controversy. I really do think he talks about altars to an alien god. I really do think he means what he says when he talks about this weird 10% of resources that come back the other way. And I do think, Joe, that he knows exactly what he's talking to on the other end when he's talking about this thing will not give one bad word, bleep, about us when it gets here. And he's the dude creating the portals for it every time he fires up the D-Wave.
He totally knows what he's talking about. Now,
think about it, Joe, though. Think about it, right? He does this. He gets the 10% resources. We wonder what that is. Well, let's look at his actions, guys. His actions is to figure out what this information is he's getting with quadrant AI. That makes sense of data. And from that information that he's gleaning information from, as he's analyzing it, his next step in his business model is to create a company called Sanctuary that is able to be inhabited by AI. By what?
Right.
So
he's
what did
building vessels.
Yeah.
He's building vessels for whatever it is that's giving him that extra 10%. He's building what they want, basically vessels, so that they can live physically in this realm. It's crazy, dude.
I mean, Ryan, he didn't go on to create a company that was giving him some kind of answer to free energy. We know that probably wouldn't float anyway, but you see how he's taken the information and his next step was to create a race, a species of synthetic human-like robots. Makes you wonder what that information told him, eh?
Yeah, it reminds me, is it the movie Contact where they channel the plans to build the machine, right? Time machine /
yeah, it's like a big kind of the gyroscope, the circles all spinning and things, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, this is not a new concept. It's as old as man and before recorded time, the idea of things coming from other worlds. I mean, even something like Halloween is actually based off of that very idea. During Halloween, during that time of the year, traditionally, most people in the world just know it as Halloween, those that celebrate it. Some countries, they still have the traditional Halloween celebrations, but where you have this idea that the world of the spirits and the world of the physical living, the line between the two becomes blurred, so those worlds merge, and you have the dead come over into our world. And some people dress up in costumes, right? So they can welcome the spirits into our world, and others dress up in costumes to scare the evil spirits away. You might want to scare evil ones away and welcome relatives that you'd like to talk with, if you will. But people like Geordie Rose and many others in the tech industry, they're opening that portal. They're holding it open. And I think rather than wearing costumes to scare those spirits back into the spirit world that might be mischievous, that's why we leave out food and things like that to appease them, so we don't have the trick, as in trick or treat. What they're doing is they are bringing those spirits in, and they're wearing things, if you will, just along with this example, they're wearing things that welcome the spirits into our world. They want those spirits to come into our world. A really great example of this is a pretty decent movie I just watched again with Sam Neill, Event Horizon.
Brilliant film. Brilliant. Yeah, that's a brilliant movie, dude.
And he calls it pure evil, and it takes possession of him to build the gravity drive. And when they, of course, open the gravity drive up, it takes the ship basically to hell. And I thought it was really, really disturbing in that movie, the imagery, of course, of what they interpreted as hell, where people were just, their guts were taken out of their body and they were ripping each other apart. It was very gory and violent in some of those scenes. And the captain of the ship, if you notice this, he had his eyeballs in his hands. And that reminded me, when I saw it, I thought, that is exactly Pan's Labyrinth. That's the Pale Man. He has his eyeballs in his hands. That's the rake. That's in the other world, the other dimension that Ophelia has to go into. She goes into the Pale Man's lair, and that takes us back around to Slender Man that you mentioned earlier, and manifesting things in our world through things like the internet, through things like entertainment. All of it connects together, and I think the more and more energy and attention we focus on these kinds of things, along with the information being made available, the more and more it manifests, the quicker it manifests, and the quicker time seems to move forward.
And you mentioned there some of these holidays where we see the rituals that are carried out. And of course, we're approaching very fast here the holiday, the celebration of Beltane. Ryan?
Oh, I love a good Beltane festival.
Oh, now over here, I mean, we've got fire festivals in Edinburgh and on the Orkney Islands as well. You know, Beltane is certainly one of these high points in the occultist calendar, wouldn't you say, Ryan? Aye.
Yes, it absolutely is. I love doing a Beltane show every year because you can sort of predict from year to year based on patterns what's going to happen the next year. Not in the event and where it's going to be, but you can predict that there are going to be events that are going to deal with fire, explosions, and usually the death or the injury of children. And I can, in fact, I just pulled this up because as you were talking about,
is that right? So you can glean information from that?
You can predict, really, Joe, if you know what the holiday's about. I know what Ryan's saying here. You can see the synchronicities with the stories that appear in the media at that time.
Okay.
I can give you an example just so that listeners have an idea if they've never heard this before. This is something that people can send me more stuff they do every year. And it's just, for me, it's not like I'm an authority on this. It's just putting information together. So let me give you a couple of examples, a couple of ideas here. And let me preface it by saying that you could find information that is historically significant for any day in the year. But when it comes to this very specific type of events and the things like fire and the harming of children, I just think it's not a coincidence that this all occurred. These very significant historical events, all within this time period, all within Beltane. Let me read you a few of them. I'll try not to be too drab here in my explanation.
Oh, no. Keep this going. I like this, dude.
No, you couldn't possibly be drab.
No,
go ahead.
Brilliant, man.
All right, so I'm going to read you just a few dates to start, and then we'll just go generally with the month of April. So April the 4th through April the 5th, 2016. I put these in order from the beginning to the end of the month. We had the massive wildfires in Oklahoma back in 2016, and that was actually on the front page of a lot of newspapers, and that was right at the beginning of Beltane, massive fires. Well, April 14th, 1865, a very significant day. John Wilkes Booth assassinated President Abraham Lincoln, or at least maybe it was John Wilkes Booth. At the very least, he had connections to the Bank of England. April 15th, 2013 was the Boston Marathon bombing where 3 people were killed, hundreds were injured. 1 child was involved in that. Specifically, they put that child on the front of a Time magazine. April 16th, 2007, Virginia Tech shooting, 32 students left dead. April 18th, 2013, there was a massive fiery explosion, not some side story in the newspaper, front page of most newspapers. It was at the Texas Waco fertilizer plant. It was only 20 miles north of Waco, Texas. We know what happened there. April 18th, 1942 was the first air raid on mainland Japan. And I think certain dates like this are selected because of the significance of the holy day. And then I'm going to rattle off the rest of these. April 19th was the infamous Waco, Texas incident where about 25 kids died, 1993. April 19th, all of these are April 19th, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which made the Revolutionary War inevitable. That was one of the bloodiest battles historically, according to history books, one of the bloodiest battles that led up to the Revolutionary War. So there's blood sacrifice again. Same date, 1995, Oklahoma City bombing, 19 children dead. Same date, 1861. Battles broke out in Baltimore and Maryland, which produced the first deaths by hostile action in the American Civil War. April 20th was also the Ludlow massacre that had to do with the Rockefeller Company and a union murdered a bunch of people. April 20th, 2010, we had the Deepwater Horizon offshore drilling rig. Big explosion, fire, 11 people died. They also announced that at 11 a.m., 11 people died. I don't know if that's significant. But then here are some other ones. April 20th, 1999, the Columbine Massacre, 12 students dead, 1 teacher killed. April 21st, 2016, Prince died, 57 years old, 5 plus 7 is 13. I don't know if that's significant. People like to look at that maybe. April 21st, 2016, another massive explosion at a petrochemical plant in Mexico, killing 13 people. Similar to another explosion in Texas back on April 18th of 2013, where, as I remember, I'm not sure if this is 100% accurate, but I think 13 more people were injured in that. I could be wrong. I don't have that written down.
Wow.
The list just goes on and on.
You think of that Deepwater Horizon one, guys, and that's a weird one in itself because that was predicted ahead of time in the movie The Knowing. Remember, we seen
Yeah,
footage of something very similar in that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Wasn't that Nicolas Cage?
Well, take it one step weirder, because Nicolas Cage is one of these celebrities that you can look at photographs of the past, like the ancient past, Civil War times, things like that.
Yeah.
And you see people with an uncanny doppelganger-like resemblance. I don't know what's happening there.
Wait a minute, Kev. You're saying David Wilcock is the reincarnation of Edgar Casey?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Categorically. More likely a reincarnation of a blue avian at the South Pole.
Probably so. I want to give you another example of these April dates to sum this up. Other than George Washington becoming the first president of the U.S. on April 30th, Hitler also supposedly killed himself on April 30th at 3:30 p.m. But April 30th of 1966 was specifically chosen to found the Church of Satan. There's a specific reason these dates are significant. And there's a specific reason that the Church of Satan was founded on April 30th, because this whole month of April into May, the Beltane Festival, which technically starts mid-month to May 1st, is, for a lot of people, I don't think all Satanists, I've known some Satanists in my life, they don't believe this, but I think for people that are actually, let's just say evil, I think it's a very significant time of the year, and I think events that, if they're not orchestrated, they're engineered in another way, perceptually, where we look for things that are relating to fire and blood and to children and to death and destruction, and then that becomes the top news story for that period of time, and it kind of promotes and puts energy into this and creates a ritual where otherwise there wouldn't be one engineered. But the base point is these dates are significant. They're very important for some people, and regardless of what you believe, you could think this is nonsense, that's just a coincidence, all of these very significant dates, which in a way it is. Other people don't believe that, and they'll do whatever they have to do, whatever they want to do to advance their belief system and their agenda forward. And if that means killing a bunch of kids, if that means blowing something up, they'll do it. And a lot of people are psychotic, so they don't have empathy. We can't understand why they would do it, but here is the evidence. They have done it.
You're absolutely spot on. And Joe, it's correct. You know, you have to look at things through the mindset, through the eyes of the people who are running the system. That's something I came to learn early on. And it doesn't matter what your beliefs are. These people, these elites, cabal, deep state, whatever way you want to call them, Illuminati, ooga booga, they certainly believe in this kind of thing. And there are these kind of high points throughout the year where you better believe they manipulate things to tie in with what's going on.
They most certainly do. The powers that shouldn't be, I don't know how coordinated they actually are, or, you know, if you read propaganda, for example, Bernays basically says they're not really that organized. They don't really talk much, you know, but they're working kind of in tandem. Well, who's providing that cadence, you know? And if you ask me, it's coming from somewhere else. And they tap into that energy. And of course, what you see today is the culmination, if you will, of all of that effort. You have a physical realm where the chasm between the haves and the have-nots has never been greater. Even during the time of the robber barons, they weren't that well off, we'll say. I mean, how do you quantify the wealth on that one side? You know, you can't even do it. So, I think this is all done by design. And, you know, like the simulation thing suggests, the creator operates outside of the parameters of the simulation, has to, because he sets the rules, you know? So, and of course you've had multiple things running on your computer at once, haven't you, Kev?
I certainly have, Joe.
Yeah, right. So you multitask, and that's the way I kind of look at it, you know, when it comes to multiverses and alternate realities and things like that.
I have something interesting to bring up here about If I say this word, people either immediately tune out or...
Is it an ooga booga word?
Oh, we like trigger words. Go for
Yeah,
it.
we love trigger words.
All right, well, let me trigger some people here. This is maybe a different kind of triggering than you'd suspect, but if I say Illuminati, I know a lot of people
Nice.
triggered by that.
Ooga
Triggered
booga.
by that.
Ooga booga.
And we think that means like some sinister elite cabal control. But I regardless of that, I think Illuminati very, very quickly is a concept. It was an actual secret society, and that's what I wanted to bring up because I thought this was interesting. I thought you'd get something out of this, guys,
Sure.
and all the listeners. May 1st, which is at the very tail end of the Beltane Festival, technically Walpurgis, it's a 3-day festival, the end of April into May 1st. May 1st of 1776 is when the Bavarian Illuminati was spawned, and their official goal, historically, was to infiltrate various governments and to basically demolish the industrial world and to demolish people's faith in any kind of authority except a very few handful of people that controlled things. It's very much based in a way on socialism and communism and Marxism specifically. However, the Bavarian Illuminati spawned in 1776, May 1st.
Yes, it was.
Now here's something very interesting.
What is it?
When the One World Trade Center was first announced that it was going to be built,
Right.
I happened to be looking through a newspaper. I had a USA Today at the time, and I'm looking through it, and I saw this announcement. It was on the front page. It was a tiny little article, and it said One World Trade Center to be built. And I read through it, and it said the architectural height, get this, the architectural height of the building is 1,776 feet. And I remember bringing that up on my radio show at the time, and I just proposed it, and somebody said, well, that's the year the United States of America became a country. And I said, sure. But it would be one thing if the tower was announced on July 4th, let's say, with 1,776 feet.
Yeah.
They announced it on May 1st that it was 776 feet. I just thought that was significant.
And of course, Ryan, over here in Europe, that's typically the day that Europe starts to burn because we have our May Day protests.
You have your May Day protests, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. All those workers out there across Europe, rioting. You get your black bloc, stuff like that. Yeah, so it's definitely one of these high dates. And of course, isn't that the culmination of the 2 weeks of Beltane?
Yeah.
Well, precisely. I mentioned that a moment ago. Yes, it is the culmination of the Beltane Festival, specifically the 3-day festival. And it's also, I actually, not because I'm smart, I don't think that at all, but I kind of predicted this based on what we were talking about earlier, that the new baby, the little baby girl, the royal baby girl, Charlotte, this little girl was going to be born during the Beltane Festival, and it turns out she was born May 2nd. So they just there. Just like
that's
William
powerful.
was born. William was born on the summer solstice. They induced labor so that he would be born.
So they do that.
Yes.
Yep, they absolutely do that. And also, May 1st, 1776 was the day that Adam Weishaupt laid out the objectives of the Bavarian Illuminati. Yes. And it was seven goals that eventually were melded into the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto when Mr. Karl Marx penned that. I'm going to have to dust mine off. I haven't taken mine out in a while.
You haven't done that show in so long, Joe.
I'm telling you, but they're so important because if you look at it today, wow, abolition of all ordered governments. No, we see that happening. Anytime anybody kind of pushes against that established order, they get eliminated. Abolition of private property. Look at civil asset forfeiture. You know what? We're gonna take. Is that cash you have there, man? Is that cash? How much cash do you have in the vehicle tonight? You don't have private property anymore. You have no property rights. Abolition of inheritance. Look at the inheritance taxes all over the world. They're huge. Abolition of patriotism. Abolition of the family. Abolition of religion, and creation of a world government.
The planks of communism, I compared those in my book, Food Philosophy. I've done dozens of shows on this.
Yeah.
If you compare those to the 17 goals to sustainability, Agenda 2030 at the United Nations, you can find it on their website. The goals are almost identical to the planks of communism, although there are 17. Almost identical.
Yeah, well, just add some. That's it.
Sustainable
10
planks,
isn't enough.
Joe.
Yeah.
Sustainable planks.
Sustainable planks.
They are very sustainable, yes.
That's so funny.
Man Bear Pig tested them himself.
Oh my God.
If you want to see more of that more documented evidence of just the planks of communism in comparison with, let's say, the 17 points to sustainability, I've written down I've written down 5 more here that I'm going to do a show on this soon. Of course, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is a very, very famous one, but there's also the 2005 through 2014 UNESCO report where they say education is a threat to sustainability. There's the report from Iron Mountain in 1966. There's the 1968 foundation of the Club of Rome into 1991 when they published the first Global Revolution, their first publication, where they also talked about this. And then a huge one is a document called The Changing Images of Man from the Stanford Research Institute Center and the Center for the Study of Social Policy.
Sounds delightful.
It's a wonderful group. You really want to get involved with them. They want, according to their documentation, they want youth to be involved in the political process. Sounds like a good idea, but one thing that really got me was when I read they want women's liberation and black consciousness. Those are their words. Women's liberation and black consciousness. That's one of the 17 goals from the UN. Equality between the races. All of this has to do with bringing perceptually society together in a peaceful utopian manner. But what it actually is, these people are telling you outright, we're going to use women. We're going to use black people. We're going to use the youth. We're going to weaponize race. We're going to weaponize very, very obvious things that divide so that a conqueror is able to more easily conquer. That's what this is. This isn't like bringing the world together in peace. These are private, in some cases, private foundations. You've got like others like the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegie Endowment, the Ford Foundation. You've got massive think tanks. They propose all the exact same thing, and it just happens to be in line with something like Marxism, not because I'm like a McCarthyist and I'm scared of communism. Communism is like the Illuminati.
This is the Camp Baker Show.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Ryan Gable is here with me tonight, along with Joe Joseph. And at the start of the show, I was explaining how it was a bit of a crazy day all round and linked to stuff that I'd spoke about with Joe last night. And I also said that it got a bit stranger just before coming on the air because I discovered, thanks to Brody out there, that there was a big problem with Facebook. And this Facebook outage led to the hashtag Facebook down trending over on Twitter.
Hot diggity.
It's still trending now. And Ryan was saying during the break he couldn't share any of my content. When I went to log in today, I put a video up about this. It told me my account was temporarily unavailable, and I thought for one moment I had really kind of knocked it off and finally got put in Facebook jail. But no, I then came to find out it was Instagram, something to do with an algorithm at Instagram had caused a problem, and that had knocked Messenger, Facebook out. And it says here on the Facebook blog, earlier today Facebook was down or unreachable for many of you for temporarily or for approximately 2.5 hours. This is the worst outage we've had in 4 years and wanted to first of all apologise for it. We also wanted to provide as much technical detail on what happened and share one big lesson learned. The key flaw that caused this outage to be so severe was an unfortunate handling of an error condition, an automated system, an algorithm in other words, for verifying configuration values ended up causing much more damage than it fixed. So this is their excuse. On you go, Ryan.
I thought you were going to say that Facebook said the reason was because there were too many anti-vax posts.
Yeah, well, they got rid of a group the other day, the Freedom Project, with over 6 million users. That certainly...
Now, look, karma's a bitch, right?
So do we think maybe somebody hacked it? Do we think that could be a potential?
No, but I think that maybe, cause and effect. Universe has a way of kind of pushing back, and you throw a bunch of negative energy by blanket banning 6 million freaking anti-vaxxers, you're gonna get something back on the other end, you know?
I think it's just suspicious. I don't trust any of these companies at all.
No, I don't either.
Well, Ryan, today I put out a video on YouTube, like I said, and my speculation is this is a very well planned ahead of time upgrade of algorithms. They're changing something, they're tweaking something that's been planned all along. That they're changing the game. When we come back, there's probably going to be less people online than there used to be. People are going to disappear down the memory hole. That kind of thing's going on.
You know what this is? Reminds me of two things. It reminds me of the Matrix when Neo saw the black cat twice. It's a glitch in the Matrix. Something's been reset. And it also reminds me of Terminator 3, where they were talking about when they showed the activation of Skynet, where they were talking about how all the systems were down. They couldn't isolate the virus, but Skynet could help them to isolate the virus and exterminate it. And then they activated Skynet. Skynet is the virus. Maybe what this is that part of the movie. It's kind of eerie to think about things like that.
Oh, I like that. I do like that. But that glitch, you see, this is the way my mind works as well, Ryan, because that glitch, almost of the Matrix, that kind of repeating, the black cat, it's almost weird how, or I think it's weird how on the same day we find out about this whole time experiment where they reverse time. Now, obviously, that didn't happen at the same time that this occurred. However, it just does make you wonder what's going on with the Matrix right now.
Have you ever heard of, I'm sure you have, Kev, this is like asking you if you can count to 3. Have you heard of the Sentient World Simulation?
Oh, out of Purdue University, where 7 billion of us, each and every one of us, is represented by a node on a simulation that is exactly a real-time replica of the real world. That one?
Yep, that's the exact one. You explained it better than I was going to, so there you have it.
Well, you think about that running on the quantum computer that we were talking about earlier on in the show, Ryan. And with quantum systems, they're able to basically, able to basically have predictive components to them, you know, almost Minority Report style. And I wonder if, you know, when they are able to almost glimpse into the future, and the simulations, they can run millions at once, right? They can see what, putting one headline out over another, what way we're going to react ahead of time. Again, this is the whole manipulation of reality at that quantum scale, isn't it?
It is. It reminds me of when Amazon announced that through algorithms, they could send you a package before you had ordered it.
Yep.
And it also reminds me, that's a macrocosm. It reminds me of the microcosm.
I use that story as an example of Amazon basically poking fun at us because they were saying, look at us, we've got the D-Wave because they're an owner of it. And literally, because we know so much about you, we truly can predict what you want ahead of time. And people who know quantum mechanics, stuff like that, they probably got another level of understanding out of that headline. Much like when CERN said the invisible mystery object turned up in one of the rings. I mean, the mystery invisible object. And of course, that's just a take on that quantum state, how you can't observe something. They know it's there, but they can't see it because they can't look at it.
That idea that there are multiple kinds, I don't think it's a very popular idea, but there are multiple kinds of mind control. There are multiple kinds of realities that can be created or ways in which to create a reality. I was thinking of something very, very simple that we normally don't think about. Like when you go into a grocery store, a lot of people in the south of the United States, and I just think of this store because I grew up with it, a store called Publix, which is very, very kind of famous in its own right for their deli section. And if you go into most grocery stores, they have their deli section with the fresh baked bread and the fresh cut flowers, right? A lot of people know this as NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It's been scientifically demonstrated, just like with music. You go into a grocery store, you see fresh flowers, fresh bread, and then you start to perceive other things in the store that might not be as fresh as being more fresh than they really are. That's a microcosm. That is just very standard psychology and standard science. And that's been understood for probably close to a century, if not more. To think that there aren't people in positions of power, psychopaths, people that lack empathy, people that are concerned with only making profit, they'll go to any end, any method, in order to control and manipulate people into buying either a product or buying an ideology. And there are many people from many backgrounds and many ideologies that are trying to sell you different points of view on reality. That's why I don't think it's necessarily one grand conspiracy. But then we have to ask, how are these people in these positions of power able to do things like this, all kind of in succession with one another, where one company says, let's do this, and the other company says, oh, we've already been doing that. There's a working together, and if there's not a direct working together, I think a lot of that is coming from maybe another dimension. It's coming through the quantum world, and these types of beings, Geordie Rose calls them the elder ones, or the great gods of is it Lovecraft?
The tentacles of Cthulhu, shall we say?
Yes, and I've thought that. I don't even really know anything about Lovecraft, to be honest with you. I've never been
Same
a Lovecraft
here. He was the first kind of real introduction I had to Ryan, and then I've heard Clyde talking about Cthulhu before. And, of course, if you look at Stranger Things, that's what I like about you as well. You'll watch a lot of the same programs myself and Joe do. Stranger Things, that entity you see in the second season there, very Cthulhu-like.
That's the parasite. That's your tentacle, your octopus of Charlie Robinson.
Exactly.
The long tentacles. Slender Man has the long tentacles.
Isn't it funny how the tentacles, Joe, seem to be almost like a golden thread through everything, if you look at it.
Recurring theme as well.
Yeah. Ooga booga.
Did you guys that story about the little boy in the Carolinas in the United States, Casey Hathaway?
Yep, but it's a good one. Tell us, man.
I called in the Clyde show when he did this several weeks ago, and then I did my own show called Summoning Netflix. I thought it was really, really kind of weird. There was another story going back to the 1800s about a very similar, if not identical, case of I think a little girl went missing. She was very young, I think around 3 or 4 years old. She went missing. She was found later in the woods, and she said like a dog man watched after her. Casey Hathaway was a little bit different. This little boy, 3 years old, was gone for about 3 days. Extreme weather conditions. Most people would have been very, very sick if they had survived. He's a little kid, and he survived very low temperatures, rain, sinkholes on the property, and he was found. This is what I called and talked to Clyde about. He was found in kind of like vines. They said vines and thorns, and I think the New York Post and a few others reported that. And then simultaneously, when the boy was found in these vines twisted up like Slender Man tried to take him, I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying symbolically, then he comes home, and the mom was asked, what is the kid feeling? Are you glad to have your son back? Just very standard news questions. See what the mom would say and run that story. And the mom said he's doing very well. He wants to watch Netflix. And it's like this kid had an obsession with Netflix, and then one of the popular shows there is Stranger Things and the tentacles you just brought up, and that reminds me.
Look at the one we spoke about before, though. Think of Bandersnatch. Now, Joe, have you watched it or have you interacted with this movie, Bandersnatch?
No, I have not.
Well, this is the episode or the movie-length episode of Black Mirror where you literally choose the outcome of the character. Ryan, we spoke about this before, didn't we, when we talked about Bird Box?
That's too much for me.
And now you're but not only that, Joe, because you think, yeah, cool, you're interacting with the character, you have the outcome, different endings, blah, blah. But really, at the same time as that, a layer beneath that, the AI from Netflix is learning more about you. Because when you come off of there, your recommendation list, it looks entirely different, perhaps, to what it did before.
And they sell that data, too, on top of it.
They sell it or they trade it, which is another way companies get around saying legally, hey, we don't sell it. Well, they just trade it. But exactly, you're exactly right, Kev. That's exactly what Netflix is doing. They're tracking what you do. They admit that they're tracking what you do to give you a better list of television shows or movies to watch, to make it more convenient and more luxurious to watch Netflix as opposed to having to pick it for yourself. And what that does is it allows the machine, it allows the AI to become more human, and it turns us into the machine, because then Netflix, although we can control the characters in Bandersnatch, as Netflix learns in the real world, Netflix then starts giving us commands of what we should do next. And then we listen to it because, they've got our best interest in mind. They're giving us an idea of what we should do, just like we give the character in Bandersnatch. And also, just real quick, another thing about time travel and things like that.
No, yes, please.
In Bandersnatch, remember, it's like 1984, I think.
No, it is, yeah, 1984. You knew they would set it in that year, didn't you? Charlie Booker, he's not daft.
No, they specifically chose 1984, of course. But then the theme is in the past, when we're watching this show in the present, there's that scene where the I'm not going to give it away if you haven't seen it, but there's a scene. It's on the internet now. It's very, very kind of popular. This idea that you can suggest to the kid in the TV show that he is being controlled from the future, though it's us in the present, on a platform called Netflix. But he's in 1984, and we're controlling him from the 21st century, but we're doing it also in the present. So there's a play there with time and our perception of the past, present, and future, because in the TV show, he's in 1984, and he's working on the very kind of system that allows us to interact with that television show in the 21st century. So it just plays with time, and it plays with your mind.
Well, you know, Joe was the one I could slap him for it, and I wish I was close enough to meet him for a coffee and to slap him. But he was the one that said to me, "Oh, Kev, you absolutely must watch Bird Box, Ryan." And the first time I watched the first time I watched Bird Box, I thought I'd never get those 2 hours of my life back.
I was in the edge of my seat the whole time.
But the thing was, Joe, then I heard Clyde Lewis and Ryan talking about it. So, Ryan, give Joe the kind of bullet points of what you took from Bird Box, because I don't think he's heard you talking about this before, man. And I know Joe, big fan of the movie. So, Bird Box, what's going on there, Ryan?
I'll do my best to sum it up very quick. From what I took out of it the first time, very little. And then I thought, you know what, I want to watch that again, because Clyde actually called me and was asking me what I thought of it. And I thought, well, I think it has to do a little bit with social media and obviously our perceptions of reality. Some of the things I noticed were that the monsters actually were very tentacly-like when they showed some of the images this guy had drawn.
Yeah.
There's a lot of archetypes, a lot of mythology in this movie, and a lot of political undertones as well. One guy's kind of like a MAGA supporter in a way. Yeah. So when you look at the movie deeper, though, it's really similar. In fact, it's almost identical to all of the social media internet challenges, because Bird Box became very, very popular, and it began trending after it was released because of memes on the internet with Sandra Bullock and the blindfold and things like that. Right. So through memes, it became very, very popular, and that's how Slender Man and Momo and some other challenges and characters from the internet became actually real. And what is the basis of Bird Box? If you remove the blindfold, then you see this thing that is fear or trauma, and you commit suicide. And what I think that kind of implied in a deeper way is I think the blindfold is something that we have to wear symbolically when we watch entertainment, when we go on the social media, because if we don't discern with that blindfold, if we don't pay attention to what we're watching, what we're paying attention to, energy, pain, currency, money, then we're going to be influenced by it. And what can influence us on social media and the internet are things like challenges, whether that's snorting a condom up your nose or that's the Momo challenge, which is 100% very, very real, despite what CNN and the New York Times says. And when we see those things, we know there is a very long history, the last year, but even before that, before Momo, of people committing suicide, harming themselves or harming others because they participated in those challenges. And that's what happens in Bird Box. You see these things, you commit suicide. And by the way, Kev, I don't know if you guys saw this. Did you see that the creator, the sculptor of Momo, disassembled the Momo sculpture and he saved one of the eyes out of it?
I've seen the mother bird sculpture, but I didn't know this about the eyes.
Well, there you go. First of all, Mother Bird, Bird Box, Mother Monster, Lady Gaga, Eminem's the monster. These are the monsters.
And you mentioned eyes earlier on about one of these characters from mythology, didn't you? Taking the eyes back.
Yeah, the Pale Man. Yeah, with the eyes, which was very.
And they got, what is it? Eyes the horror game. That's another game that's making its rounds along with the Slender Man and everything. Yeah.
I've never heard of Eyes the horror game.
Yeah, check that out.
I'm gonna have to check that out, Joe.
Yeah.
What's that all about, dude?
I don't know. My kids play it.
Oh, have you checked it out, man?
I have.
What? Tell us
Just
about it.
It's kind of you wander around aimlessly and try to
Oh,
avoid
no.
this.
Right, hang on a minute. I'm looking at this here. Now, this is weird. I'm going to bring this up on the screen because, Ryan, you're going to get the kind of weird synchronicities going on here with stuff we've spoke about in the past.
There it is.
Eyes, the horror game, features a character that is a child with black eyes.
Charlie, right?
Black-eyed child. I'll send you the search results here, guys, into the.
Child.
If you bring that up there, you'll be able to see it.
There are so many, and it's because symbolically and mythologically, the eyes contain what? It contains a gateway to the soul. That's why you see eyes used in the capacity that they are in TV shows and movies when we talk about things of this nature. And I found something very disturbing. I did a show on this last Thursday. Most of my archive is locked, but I put out the show that Clyde, Lewis, and you, Kev, that we did. That's free in our archive. And then this show specifically called Devil's One Eye, I did last Thursday. That's also free in our archive at www.thesecretteachings.info. And that show was based on the guy that created Momo. He throws the sculpture out, and he says he saved an eyeball, one eye, to put it into another piece of art. And so that brings up two things that are very important. Number one, there is a very famous alchemist. Many of you probably know who he is. His name is Paracelsus. And he wrote about how to create monsters like the shadow monster, the Lady Gaga mother monster, mother bird, bird box. To create monsters, you go into a process, and it's metaphoric and symbolic, but you go into a process of using art. Art produces these monsters. Through art, he says, they acquire their life, their blood, their bones, and through art, they acquire their life. And so through art, Momo comes into existence as from the sculpture to the internet. But besides that, you also have a story, one of the original Momo stories out of India. And this gave me cold chills. It's why I called the show Devil's One Eye. This kid in India, 18 years old, he committed suicide after the Momo game. That's what Indian law enforcement said. In the room with him, when he hanged himself, very close to his house, he hanged himself, he wrote some things on the wall. One of the things he wrote on the wall, this was one of the first Momo stories, and then the last one, as I said, the creator, the sculptor of the mother bird, which became Momo, secondarily, he saved one of the eyes. This kid in India, to start the whole Momo thing, which it didn't get a lot of attention when this story came out, but this kid in India, he hangs himself, and on the wall, he wrote Devil's One Eye. And that just gave me goosebumps when I read that, and that's why I had to do a show on it last Thursday. It's disturbing to think that. I don't know what that means, but come on.
If you look in the Skype, Ryan, I've sent an image from the actual Google App Store for the game that Joe was referring to, called Eyes, the horror game. And I'll send the logo as well, which is, funnily enough, just one eye. We talked about the Illuminati earlier on. This is very
look
symbolic.
At that thing.
But that is disturbing. That's from the game.
The game, the screenshot,
that's
for the benefit of the listeners out there, I mean, what I'm looking at and what the guys are looking at is a white head, and it's like vampire teeth, very kind of like predator-like teeth. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the red, black eyes, but it's not a body on it. It's almost like there's tentacles coming off it, back to the tentacles.
Or whatever you want to call it. Looks like entrails.
Entrails, tentacles. It's the same imagery, Joe. You know, it's weird how that comes up again.
There's also that movie I can never pronounce it. It's Miss Peregrine's Home for Extraordinary Children. I think that's the name of it.
That is a sick. I mean, I couldn't get through the first episode of that thing. Oh, it was awful.
It's really disturbing, specifically because I think it's Samuel L. Jackson, and he in order to stay human, they have to literally eat the eyeballs of children.
The eyeballs, yeah.
Right, and they have this giant. This reminded me, this image you sent me, Kev, from that game. If you look at this character, I just typed it in again. I forget the exact name of it, but you type in Miss Peregrine's Home monster and look at the images, and you'll see this giant monster that comes after the kids. And this monster is Slender Man. They just call it something different. He's got the long tentacles that come out of his mouth, kind of like Resident Evil in a way, and he has no eyes, white, pale face. But his mouth when it opens up, it's just these razor sharp teeth, and it looks very similar to that game image you just sent me.
I'm looking at it right now. Very, very Cthulhu, very Stranger Things, very octopus, very interdimensional, very much linking everything together tonight, gents.
Very much so.
Mouth is the name.
Yeah, what an experience this was. Wow. What a show, guys. Ryan, I can't thank you enough for joining us again. Yeah, I mean,
Ryan, wonderful.
Isn't he just, Joe? I told you, I promised you a good show. And that's why I dragged you on here tonight, because I knew you'd really appreciate this, as have I, and as have all of the audience, I imagine. So, Ryan, give your websites a plug again. When can we hear you? And what have you got planned coming up in the future?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you both for having me on the broadcast tonight. Kev, thank you for having me back again. My show airs 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. U.S. Pacific time on The Fringe FM. The network is thefringe.fm. My website, www.thesecretteachings.info. 5 nights a week, but my massive archive is going to give you access to be able to download every single one of those shows if you can't listen. Great guests and timeless subjects. Last week, Clyde Lewis and Kev Baker on a roundtable. We did that last Tuesday. I've done a tremendous number of shows with just myself, but recently I've got guests lined up like James McCaney, Jordan Maxwell, Ahmed Osman. The list goes on and on.
Jordan Maxwell, dude. He was one of the first cats I interviewed. And, you know, people like him, I don't think we pay enough credit. And it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with the guy. I mean, he laid the way for people like us. And he often talks about going back over 4 or 5 decades now when he was having to walk to libraries, travel the world to get his hands on these books and things, you know.
He's the grandfather of all that we do.
Yeah. And when we talk about putting energy into things in the internet, Jordan talks about our energy, currency, all that kind of things. And the eye-opening experience that I had listening to him in my formative years in this community, priceless. Brilliant.
I also have Charlie Robinson joining me tomorrow, but everything is on my website, and Kev and I will be doing, I'm sure, more shows in the future. Kev, it's really a pleasure. I have so much fun being here.
And I'll publicly shame the fact that I've left you waiting for a little segment for your book that's coming out. I'll publicly shame myself, yes. No, but Ryan, can't speak highly enough of you, brother, and I was saying to Joe, you're definitely our kind of people. We love having you on here, and I warn the listeners out there, once you start listening to Ryan's show, it's kind of addictive. You end up going back for more. And that is probably the highest compliment I can pay anyone. So, Ryan, I thank you, man.
Thank you, Kev. I try to listen to your show every night. I'm not just blowing smoke.
No, I've seen you in the live chat over on YouTube as well, dude. You need to join us one weekend so we can, you know, let our hair down and, you know, just go
maybe
absolutely mad.
Friday or something, too.
Freaky Friday, yes.
I found my camera, so I can do a video feed.
Oh, nice. Very good, very good.
Very nice.
So that'll be good.
We could get some occult kind of magic, kind of Crowley stuff one Saturday night with you or something, maybe.
I love magic and occultism. Anytime you name the place, and I'll be there.
Joe, you hear that? You hear that? But folks, we're out of time, and coming up after the break, Kristen T. Harris. He will be on with Lockie and Dr. Brooks Agnew, so don't go anywhere.
Good.
And a reminder to anyone in the UK, I'll be back the earlier time of 9 p.m. tomorrow. That's 9 p.m. Yes, we've time travelled. Both on the show here tonight and in reality. And there is definitely glitches in the Matrix. Join us tomorrow with End a Coin when we go deep woo. Until then, wherever you are, make it TFR and check out thesecretteachings.info. Ryan Gable, ladies and gentlemen. Good night and God bless. Ladies, we are out of there.
That's just wonderful.
Ryan, that was fantabulous.
Yeah, fantastic.
Are you going to put this on YouTube?
Yes, I am. I recorded it. I didn't even think about asking for your camera today because I knew you were rushing about. So I've recorded it all and I've got like the websites and